illustrator and a muralist. 3 words that would describe my work would be bulky, very multicultural, I think, and lighthearted. My art usually focuses on stories, and a lot of them are mine, and that I, mix a few of my own stories together to come up with a concept about stories merging together and getting lost in the details. And my favorite thing about my work is integrating surprises into the concepts. And I'm usually inking my work to begin with, a lot of sketching, inking, revisions until I find something that really clicks and the composition works, and only then do I proceed forward with the pattern work and the colors to bring it together. Being able to take my practice from Vancouver to Montreal or New York or to Europe and having that complete freedom. I don't know any profession, like personally, that has been able to take their practice on the go and move away. So that's my favorite part. The hardest thing about being an artist for me, and also the thing I celebrate at times, is the lonesomeness of this career. I did not know this before going into it. I really felt that because I was surrounded by so many creative students and creative teachers that it's going to be this way. But the hardest thing is understanding that you are going day in and out with maybe emails and your own practice and your own thoughts, but in the end of the day, it is you that's creating the work. And so you end up spending so much time by yourself, and sometimes too much time, and it could feel like you're the only one, like trying to figure it out and trying to battle your demons when it comes to your own work. And yeah, I think it's really lonely at times. And it might not seem that way through other sources, like through social media and stuff, but in the end of the day, I think it could be a little too lonely. I think it's a gut feeling. I think I've been through a lot of different projects and different types of clients where if the dialogue starts to familiarize, where things are not clear, the budgets are off, or the idea is too vague, you start to pick up on that. And I'm still a victim of being like, damn it, I should have picked up on that to begin with. Especially with clients that are abroad, that you maybe don't have, you're not in the same time frame, and the communication is hard. But I think it's a learning experience, of course, but the more I do, the more work I produce, the more I'm kind of like, yes, I've seen this kind of thing happen, and I think this is not for me. Like, you kind of like call the shots to begin with. Yeah. The most successful way I've seen so far that I'm able to expose my work is through social media, and Instagram has been great. I've been really enjoying the randomness of it, like that you just don't know who's going to be able to connect to the work. It is somebody from Japan and somebody from Australia or something. But at the same time, when I got into public art, mural work, that has really opened up a way people can connect to the work when they see it in person, because art should be experienced in person and live. So through exposing my work on walls, or doing my work on walls, it has also invited a completely different audience that I did not predict that it would connect to. So with running a business in general, I think for anyone, there's so many hats that you have to wear that maybe you weren't trained to wear, that don't fit your personality as well. And one of the challenges recently, maybe in the past year, I've been really trying to work through is staying afloat my email box. I mean, that is totally part of my persona. I feel like I looked at it, I feel like I answered it in my head, but not in the actual. And to be honest, there's this, for any artist, I'm sure, who's working with clients, there are these conversations that are going to be floating for maybe a couple of weeks or maybe a month or a quicker turnaround, but there are parallel 10 conversations that are very different from each other. But from the other end, they only see that one conversation going on with you. So being able to stay very consistent and on time with these conversations altogether is a challenge. And then you have your own life that happens outside of your email box. And I think it's being available all the time and also not being, and then feeling guilty when you're not. Yeah.
Because you're all alone.
Because you're all
alone.
You're
the only one to answer.
You're the only one, yeah. I've had these aha moments on the daily. But my favorite moment recently, and this, like, we're talking like last week, I think this became a very obvious thing to me, that I have to find a very obvious balance between client work and personal work, because sometimes one pulls into the other, and neglecting your personal work can feel like you're neglecting your own stories and your main passion, why you got into this artwork to begin with. Yeah, and that's just like when I think about starting up or maybe prioritizing my personal work, that really sparks something in me. Oh, I get excited again. Like, where is it gonna go? I don't know how it will evolve. And that, like, not having a glass ceiling to your personal work is this. Yeah, like I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna pick up a new medium. Maybe we're gonna start sculptural work. Maybe I'm gonna feel out that my stories, are better in animation. I don't know, so I'm excited to see where that goes. I remember you putting up that poster in your space where it said "Do the work," and I think when I got into illustration and I went to New York and I had this opportunity to look at other illustrators who just slave away and work hard at their practice. And I sort of like made a promise to myself that if I'm gonna do this, if I wanna actually pursue this as a career, you just have to work really, really hard, and like maybe you'll be able to pay your rent. And at least that's enough for you to keep doing what you're doing. And I guess in the spectrum of things, it's like just work and work. in a positive way. I don't mean it in a negative spectrum at all. It's just the more work I feel you produce, the better you know yourself, the better you know what you want and what you don't. And so this concept of feeling like maybe when the inspiration hits, I don't believe it. I feel like you just need to just do it. Yeah. That sounds a little aggressive. There's many things I wish I would have known. I wish I would have met artists who are in this field. I've never met them until way later in my career. But one of the things I wish I would have paid attention to and really felt that it could become my reality one day is business classes, business advice, things about organization. There's courses that were offered that I even took at Emily Carr, and I totally slept through them. I didn't pay attention, and I just felt like there's no way I would be successful enough to apply business strategies or like accounting to my work or taxes or things like this. I just did not even acknowledge it until more recently, and now it's a bit of a catch-up, and it's definitely a trial and error, because it's something that I feel like I haven't nailed. That's an interesting question, because community can vary from like a work community, creative community, or a support community but for me, community in the end of the day is like this crowd of people, or a people that make you feel grounded, I guess. And feeling grounded is usually having a glimpse of different types of lifestyles or different types of creative executions, or somebody who has a 9-to-5, somebody who has a freelancing job, and somebody who is just in the beginning of putting their business together. So having a community that has this variety of lifestyles and jobs, and having those people open about that, I think for anyone it's a benefit to understand that whatever you're doing is fine because we're all on this path together, but we're all going to get there differently. I'm working on a children's book that I've been working on for a long time on. I'm very excited about it. And I feel like it's just at the end of its process. There just needs to be maybe half a year or maybe like 4 months of work that needs to be put into it, but like solid work. And then I can let it live in the world. So that is one of my projects that I can't wait to get my hands on. Yeah. The process of mural work for me is starting off to understanding the walls and their spaces that they occupy, and seeing them as not an intimidating large pieces of structure, but as a composition that should lie as if it's a piece of paper. So really feeling that when somebody steps back, for them, they're going to read it just as they would read any art piece. The one thing that I do like to, if I have a chance, is understanding the environment that you're going to put in your work in, because in reality, you're going to produce the work, and you might not live with the work. You might be abroad and live in a different city, but you have to be sensitive enough to understand the people that are going to be living with and celebrating that. And really, for me, because I see my work as lighthearted, I want to leave that kind of feeling behind. So that's the sort of I feel you have to understand there is a responsibility that you feel with the space, but also not feeling intimidated by the scale of it, because all in all is we see so many blank walls. Might as well inspire or leave some kind of mark behind on these walls. Yeah. So the prep process entails me sketching, then doing revisions on these sketches, proposing it to the city, writing application to have the mural put up in the public space. There is also this part that I didn't know before, is your work will need to be approved by the city, but also needs to be approved by the neighborhood that you're going to be putting in. Not in all cities, but in Vancouver in particular. So if somebody is not feeling it or offended, or I don't know, so many reasons, they are completely free to object to your work. So, and I've had that happen recently where I was working on South Granville on a mural, and there's no murals in this area. Like if this one was the first one that was going up, and an older lady was like, I don't want any art on these walls. It needs to be a very just clean walls, no marks, and that was exactly what they were trying to change. So unfortunately, we had to dismiss that comment. But it is something that part of the prep is understanding that there's a moment that people can say no to the work. And then I usually look at the wall and understanding the textures of the wall. If you're dealing with brick, you should seal it because it's able to breathe, and the paint will sink in and the color will be lost within just a few weeks. So you have to seal it with like a primer or a clear primer, something that the paint can live on off. Same with cement walls, same with drywall. There's different ways that you can approach it. And also I use spray paint a lot, and spray paint lasts for a long time. So if you're able to afford in that budget of your project a bit of spray paint, I recommend it. It's a good learning process. If you have like a large scale, like a large mural, that you can start practicing spray paint and really understanding the flow of it. And then it also lasts for a long time, so bam. So scaling a piece, I've tried all ways. I've tried projecting it, which is a really great way to nail the line work out of the, like in one night. You can just come in the evening and project it and sketch it out. For sketching it out, I use either, if it's a really large mural, I take a shade, like a shade or half a shade lighter or darker than the wall, and start sketching out with the actual spray paint. You just enough of a difference between the wall and your sketches, so you can understand what the line work is. I feel like if you're doing something smaller, a really good thing to use is chalk or crayons. These thick crayons that you can buy even in an art store, but you can also buy them at Canadian Tire. They're used like blue or red crayons that you could they're oil based, so they don't wash off if it's raining. And it's very cheap. So you don't have to actually use cans and cans of spray paint just to sketch out a piece. Yes, definitely grid pieces as well. Depending also, like if you're in an area where you just can't set up a projector and you also or I had this one piece on the water and the ocean was coming right up to the wall, so there was no way I could set anything up. And even gridding it was a hard thing because you couldn't step back that far, so you kind of had to trust the grid that you have on your paper and how you're going to grid it out. So sometimes the grid is so big that you don't even have a measure that's big enough to measure it out. So this way I would start doing either stepping, like actually using your feet to grid it out that way, or your arm span. You're like, okay, that's 1, 2, and so that is your sort of like, that's how you scale things up. 1, 2. Well, L helps to be this tall too. I have a pretty big arm length. But the thing is, it works. It really does. Sometimes people use old school projectors and they just make a scan. If you have an old school projector hanging out in your house, because a lot of us do, scan your work like in a transparent sheet and then plank it on, project it. And I think that's actually quite a lot of murals that were put up during the Mural Festival were actually done with those old school projectors. It's a little factor. Not sure if it's true, but I've heard rumors. Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, so here's what I learned when it comes to painting artwork outside is weather is everything, right? In Vancouver, we have so much rain, sunshine, there's moist, there's like the paint really reacts to that, and it will lose color over time if you think that inside paint that you use inside will carry out the same lifestyle as it does outside. It does not. There's this paint, especially Deluxe, I really like. I use them a lot, and Weather Guard it's an exterior paint that withstands sunlight for years, so the sun can shine on it and still will have that color. And it's primer and color together, which is awesome. It stays for a long time. It's very opaque. But some colors, like I think this is what I've heard. I haven't tried this out, but orange and some reds are harder to like actually bring the true color up because it just needs a lot of layers. It's very pigmented, but it fades very quickly. So spray paint works very well. I find that spray paint lasts forever. Like it just doesn't, like especially if you use Montana, that brand is awesome. Like it lasts for a long time. It's oil based. It's very toxic, and, and it's gonna last. And there's no way I've never preserved any of my murals because you're using outside paint. There's no, and I've called them and I've hassled them over this. I'm like, what can I put over it? There's nothing you put over it other than building up those layers of paint on top of the artwork to sustain the color. So yeah, the only other thing is that the city does often cover the mural with anti-graffiti paint, and it should be put on by a professional, so I've never actually put it on myself. But it's great because if somebody does tag your work, they're able to take a power washer and really just wash off that paint, and your artwork is still preserved. I can't use spray paint that I use outside, but what I do indoors if I need to use spray paint is there's a new spray paint out by Montana. I should be repping for them. It's water-based. It does not have that smell. It's not toxic. It's only slightly has a smell, but it's not even that bad. It's kind of sweet. So yeah, it works pretty much just the same. And I like that. But indoors, I usually just use acrylic. Like, I use a lot of line work, and I buy really good quality black line, because I use a lot of black lines in my work. So I find some really nice black opaque paint, and that's sort of where I spend most of my money, is like where I really invest into that. And then the colors, I usually just find something that's I can use inside, and I've never had any issues except one time when I used not acrylic, but it was water-based paint, that the place started leaking and the paint started leaking. And I was like, should I use acrylic? Should I use acrylic? But it was a test. Now I know I would never use it again. The way I felt when I first started doing mural work, so intimidated by how many men were in that industry, or not in the industry, but in the scene, and practicing, and had been practicing since they were teenagers. Like they were living it, they were breathing it, they knew their practice, and I felt I was like stepping on someone's turf or something. But in reality, you're just doing what you want, like what you're interested in. So it's nobody's say what kind of style you should be executing street art in, or who should be doing it. So if you feel the drive, don't ever feel that you're not invited into that world. Just make space for yourself and claim that space. I think, and I remember how intimidating that was, and it was like, I remember just like trying to swallow my feelings and be like, this does not, like, I feel like such a loser. And because I didn't know the skills, so I would reach out to some of the guys and ask them to teach me how to spray paint and teach me some techniques and give me some pointers. And that takes, like, you really have to kind of put your ego aside and just try it out. And I recommend for anyone who has any interest in it, just do it. Like, there's no reason that you shouldn't. With mural, well, actually most of my work I haven't applied for any work. It kind of comes to me. It sounds so weird, like work comes to me, because it used to be not the case. It used to be, you'd apply to so many open calls that the city would put out, and you put proposals together over and over, and you wouldn't get a call back, or you not even an acknowledgement, just like, sorry, you were not chosen. But yeah, lately I've been mostly had people outreach from other businesses, and I'd say like there's a period of time where I did a lot of restaurants, and so many other restaurants would start reaching out. So it's like a chain reaction. I think you should produce work of what you want to be getting more of, because that's just what happens with a lot of artists or a lot of creative people. And this is a responsibility I think we should feel for ourselves, is that if we love what we do, produce more of it. It will attract the people who like it and produce that kind of work. So believe in your practice and really, and produce more of it. Hundreds, literally hundreds. When I moved to New York, I was just in my first couple months of being a full-time artist, living the dream. But the dream was me sitting at the computer and writing emails, like personal emails, being like, "Hi, Sandra, I love this project that you did." But I was genuinely like interested in their practice, and I would research about their company and then write like at least I was like 10 to 20 emails a day. I was very aggressive with my, like, check out my work, and I think I got 2 emails back, and it was hundreds. 2 emails of saying like, "We like your work, like let's work together," and those projects didn't even work out. So, but you know what I did? What I would recommend, and this really worked for me, is I would write blogs that I really liked, like fashion blogs that posted illustration work, blogs that celebrated artists in general, blogs that celebrated female artists. And so I would write to those people and be like, "I'm new, hello, love me." And those are the blogs that would post the work and, you know, highlight or just like put a little spotlight on you for a second there. And art directors do look at that stuff, and I feel like that's what really generates the work. You're like, how do these people find my work? And a lot of the times it was these blogs. Yeah, I guess it kind of stems back right into this mural work, where when I work with a certain type of client in an industry, usually it attracts other people in that industry that look up to that client. I had an interesting insight watching the work develop after I did a mural for Hootsuite, and all of a sudden so many startups were, you know, invited me to paint a mural there because a lot of them look up to Hootsuite and see, like, really keep a close eye on what they do. So that was a very beautiful way to start producing work and working in an industry that I have known nothing about, the tech startup world, and I got to know it pretty quickly. So I feel that the client work generates from depending on the industry that you are tapping into, and for me that was tech to begin with, and then other industries. I also find that sometimes when I admire an artist, I just like love their work, and maybe we have similarities between that artist and myself. I look at their client list and like who they've worked with before. I'm like, so they actually celebrate this style or this way of storytelling, and I try to reach out to them and see if they want to work together. That's a little secret, but I think it's a good way to genuinely reach out to people who might understand what your language is. I think it's like a very exciting time. Like, even when I was getting all the rejections, I knew it was exciting because I didn't know anybody else who was going through this stuff. So I was like, yeah, nobody needs to know how shitty it is right now, but I'm ambitious. So I think just celebrate the fact that, like, this is part of every successful person is the shitty times. So enjoy it and also embrace it and talk about it, because the more you talk about it, the less it feels like it's a burden and that you're alone. So for anyone who's beginning, like, keep doing it, keep nailing away and trying different avenues. And maybe painting is not your thing, and that's okay. Not everybody needs to be a painter. Or if, like, computer thing is not your way, drop the computer, start painting. Like, really test out different avenues. And yes, like, not everything is gonna work, and sometimes it's really gonna bite because it's gonna suck. And then we'll get over it the next day and we move on. So talk about it, talk about the sucky times. And also, like, one thing I have to say, what my favorite part about kind of doing it in the beginning, I felt like on my own, is that my expectations were extremely low. Like, I was just like, I don't care, give me anything to draw, I will draw you anything just so I can make my money off art is a dream. So my expectations that somebody needed to pay me extremely well at the beginning were not there, and I think that saved me from disappointment, because looking back, I don't think I was paid well at all at the beginning. You know, I'd be like, yeah, like, this works for me, like, whatever, as long as I'm producing. And that really built up to understand your own language, how you talk to clients. It's like a school, and so keep your expectations low in the beginning. That's such a bad advice, but I think it helps you to stay positive. When something good happens, you're like, oh yes, I did it! Like I'm getting there. Yeah.